Octopuses have often been described as alien, and it's not hard to see why. With large eyes sporting unusual pupils, a parrot-like beak, and an absolutely bizarre brain, they are unlike any other being on the planet, especially their invertebrate brethren. But these cephalopods aren't visitors from another world. They've been here for hundreds of millions of years, and like any other species evolution, their appearance comes from a unique set of pressures. These same pressures are also why their intelligence astonishes scientists, to the point that we need to start rethinking how we define intelligence. In this video, I'm going to give you all that you need to know about one of the most extraordinary animals on Earth, the octopus. Octopuses belong to the class Cephalopoda, which means head feet in Greek. Their body appears like it's comprised of their head and then their feet, right? So head, feet, Cephalopoda. There are about 800 species of cephalopods, and they are broadly known as squids, cuttlefish, nautili, and then octopuses. Fossil records show that they evolved over 500 million years ago, long before most modern animals began to emerge. Despite being one of the oldest animals, cephalopods stayed right in the ocean, unlike our mammalian ancestors who couldn't make up their mind. All cephalopod species live in the ocean, and octopuses can be found in literally every ocean. Flash forward to today, and there are about 300 octopus species that can be found in every single ocean in all different sizes. The starsucker pygmy octopus is the smallest octopus, measuring less than 1 inch in length, and it lives in the shallow waters off the coast of Fiji and Indonesia. And I gotta tell ya, I hate that we are living in an age where I look at this video and I'm wondering if this is AI. So please express your AI grievances in the comments. This video predates all the AI madness though. The largest octopus is the giant Pacific octopus, and it is probably the most recognizable octopus. They inhabit the northern Pacific Ocean, and in most literature, you'll read about how they weigh about 60 pounds. But most of those weights come from octopuses that are surveyed off the coast of Washington. If you go up just a little north to Alaska, you can find giant Pacific octopuses weighing about 100 pounds, and so that is about where they cap off at. I'm also excited to tell you that we're still finding new octopus species. In 2012, the Institute of Marine Research conducted one of their annual biodiversity surveys. This is where they evaluate what types of species are in the Barents Sea, which is part of the Arctic Ocean. During one of their surveys, the researchers pulled up what appeared to be a new species of octopus, but at the same time, they didn't collect that many specimens, so they couldn't be too sure. A little over a decade goes by, and the scientists finally acquired enough individuals to realize, yeah, we were definitely dealing with a new species. In February 2024, that species was formally identified as Miss Octopus aegir. And we don't know really too much else about them besides that they exist. One species you may also be familiar with is the blue-ringed octopus, which comprises of 4 separate species. They're well known because they're visibly stunning, but they are also extremely venomous. For the longest time, scientists thought they were the only venomous species of octopus. But it turns out all octopus species are venomous. It's just that the blue-ringed octopus has the most lethal venom. In fact, many of the venomous cephalopods likely share a common ancient venomous ancestor. The venom is stored in specialized glands and seems to be primarily used to subdue their prey. So octopuses grab their prey, injecting them with their paralyzing venom, and then takes them back to their den where they have their meal. Octopuses eat anything they can get, but crustaceans and mollusks make up most of their diet across the board. Hey y'all, millions of videos are uploaded to YouTube every day, and I'm so thankful you clicked on my video and stuck around to watch it. I do all the research, script writing, recording, and editing myself, so a thumbs up really boosts my confidence and tells me perhaps I'm doing a good job. Subscribing and commenting lets me know that you like me.
Right now, you like me.
And I appreciate that so much. So while I'm sorry to interrupt my own video to beg for engagement, I appreciate that you stopped by. Let's get back to it. Octopuses are incredibly important in the food web because they're an intermediate consumer. They provide a protein-packed and nutritious meal to the predators above them, but as a ravenous predator themselves, they keep their prey in check. And since octopuses lack protective shells and aren't really built for speed, they've evolved in incredible ways to avoid predation. If a predator does manage to snag them, and I'm talking about, a predator is able to rip off one of their arms, they are capable of providing themselves with first aid and growing their limbs back. When we lose a limb, we are in big trouble because we have to worry about infections and, more importantly, bleeding out. Octopuses are able to stop the bleeding by muscularly clamping their arteries and veins, and they can further contract their muscles around the wound to close it off entirely. You got a murder of crows chirping away just outside, so I'm going to close the window. Otherwise, I fear you will capture this audio. All right, they're going at it. I think they want their peanuts. I feed them peanuts. Okay, so where were we? Right, so I was saying, when we lose limbs, we're in big trouble because we have to worry about infections and then bleeding out. But octopuses are able to stop their bleeding by muscularly clamping their arteries and veins, and they can further contract their muscles around the wound to close it off entirely. While their limbs can grow back, it's an imperfect process. Sometimes the tissues can be damaged and the result of the regrowth looks a little funky. Octopuses know they are vulnerable without a shell, and as a testament to their intelligence, some species equip themselves with armor, using things like shells to protect themselves, and they carry these along with them over long trips, oftentimes sleeping in them. So they're basically equivalent to an RV. Now, I live in grizzly bear country, and I typically don't stay overnight in the woods unless I have my camper van. So I see you, Mr. Octopus. I get where you are coming from. They may also use their ink, but the most iconic defense against predation is their camouflage, where they can change color within a blink of an eye, about 200 milliseconds. Their camouflage has many layers, but it all starts with the chromatophores. These are organs comprised of tiny pigment-filled sacs that are either filled with red, black, or yellow pigments. When stretched, the skin appears lighter and then darker when contracted. But altogether, they will make octopus's skin look patterned with stripes or bands. But we obviously see octopuses change their colors outside of the reds, blacks, and yellows of the world. So how do they do that? Well, beneath the chromatophores, there's another layer of cells called iridophores. These cells are loaded with proteins called reflectin, and they bounce back specific wavelengths of light to create shimmery metallic hues of blues and greens. Beneath the iridophores are lucifores, which reflect ambient light, and they facilitate both background matching and color disruption. Color disruption being where the animal's camouflage breaks up the outline of the animal's body so they blend in even better with their surroundings. But that's not enough for the octopus, is it? No. Octopuses also have something called papillae. These change the octopus's skin texture so they can further blend in to look like objects associated with their environment. When all of those are working together, these give the octopus the ability to disappear in almost any environment. But wait a minute. Octopuses are basically colorblind, so how do they know how to camouflage themselves? After all, they do a pretty good job at blending in. Well, let me tell you. We still don't entirely understand this process, but we're pretty certain that they are colorblind, at least theoretically. We know they have only one color sensing cell that absorbs visible light with wavelengths between 475 to 360 nanometers. This means they can see green and blue hues, but because they only have the one color sensing cell, they can't necessarily distinguish the difference between those colors, so effectively they see in a grayscale. However, one hypothesis suggests they do see color with chromatic aberration. This means the wavelengths and thus the colors are separated when processing an image. For us, this is considered an optical problem that needs to be corrected. Like seriously, all the examples that I'm providing you right now is chromatic aberration, how we would perceive it, but I don't think octopuses see their colors with a blurry image. So this is just being used as an example, but from my understanding, they do see clear images, but then they're able to separate the colors. And so this hypothesis is saying that octopuses may exploit this feature in their vision, so they may detect color, though it's limited. This is possible because octopuses have really weird pupils, and their pupils allow for light to come into contact from all different angles. Additionally, octopus's skin is sensitive to light, and this is due to active photoreceptor genes in their skin. Scientists have observed severed octopus's arms responding to light for up to an hour after it was detached from its body. Even their chromatophores would change their shape. So to some capacity, octopuses are capable of seeing with their skin. So together, these features work with the brain so the octopus can camouflage itself. Other animals that have chromatophores typically change their colors hormonally, a process that's far slower than octopus's lightning-fast changes. And so this supports the idea that octopuses aren't doing this hormonally. It's completely controlled voluntarily by their brain. For sure, this takes quite a bit of brain power, and it's one among many other traits that scientists believe has led the octopuses to being so darn smart. But before we get into the extent of their intelligence, I want to talk about the anatomy of their brain because it's freaking wild. Octopuses have a complex nervous system, and where you think their brain would be is wrong. Don't even lie to me. I know you're thinking that their brain is right here. It's not there. They have a donut-shaped brain wrapped around their throats, which is freaking insane. And through my research, I found out that some people believe octopuses have 9 brains. A brain in each of their arms, and then one in their head, or the one that's wrapped around their throat. It's possible that this misconception comes from our early understanding of octopus's nervous systems. Each arm is equipped with a central nerve, and each pair of suckers have their own ganglion. Essentially, each arm looks as though they have their own spinal cord, and for all intents and purposes, it looks like the arms have their own brain. But that sounds chaotic now, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, it turns out that there is evidence that the arms kind of do have minds of their own, but they are not so out of control that they serve as a disadvantage to the octopus. Researchers have found that the suckers will initiate an action in response to information they get from their environment. Octopus's arms have neural rings that are capable of sending signals to each of the arms without their brain knowing. So this means that the arms know where they are in space and in relation to each other, but the brain has no idea. This allows the arms to coordinate better during locomotion, for example. So while the central brain is making the majority of the decisions, and effectively octopuses do just have one brain, the arms have been described as satellite brains because they have a little bit of independence. Additionally, most of octopus's neurons are not concentrated in the central brain. In total, the octopus has about 500 million neurons. To give some perspective, humans have about 100 billion. Snails, which are in the same phylum as octopuses, only have 20,000. So 500 million for an invertebrate is kind of unusual. In fact, it's more appropriate to compare them to vertebrates like cats and dogs. Only about 30 to 40% of the neurons are in the central brain, leaving 60 to 70% of those neurons located in the arms. One reason for this is because their neurological signals run a little bit slower than ours. And since their arms are used for so many different things, it's more reasonable to have neurological control localized rather than centralized like us. This ensures that they are sensing and reacting in a timely manner to compensate for the slower signals. Okay, so take a moment and think of all the species you consider to be intelligent. I'll wait. More than likely, you were thinking of humans, chimpanzees, crows, maybe dolphins. And these are all animals that are typically cared for by their parents. They form social bonds, they learn from one another. use tools to some capacity, and even think abstractly. Also, they all have backbones. Octopus's intelligence didn't follow the same evolutionary path we're familiar with. They are semiparous, meaning once reproduction takes place, the individuals start to decline rapidly and then die shortly afterwards. Without parental care, adult octopuses are not passing down information to their offspring, and there is no social bonding among siblings. Top that off with a lifespan of only 1 to 5 years, and you have a species that has to learn fast. So they have to be as inquisitive as a 3-year-old, touching everything and putting anything in its mouth. And we're discovering all of those things combined have contributed to their intelligence, and it's testing our preconceived notions about how intelligence evolves. What really tipped us off at first was when we started keeping octopuses in aquariums. The keepers have tales of octopuses escaping from their tanks to raid tanks nearby for food. And because a lot of octopuses in aquariums have an acclimation period where they kind of hide from anywhere between a few days to a few weeks, we always thought of octopuses as being kind of solitary and shy. And this is somewhat warranted. It's kind of warranted that they aren't very social either with other animals and particularly with their own, because a lot of them are cannibals. And of course, as we continue to study them more frequently, we're finding that they're more clever than we think, more social than we think. And for anyone who is an introvert, perhaps you'll understand the octopus. They select their friends carefully, and their interactions have been described as mutual tolerance. Off the coast of Australia, the gloomy octopus has created Octopolis, a cluster of octopus dens packed together like a miniature underwater city. Here, they can watch each other, copy behaviors, and learn from each other. And these little cities have been observed elsewhere. Some of them consist of all females of the same species banding together to protect their developing young, to cities that comprise of several different species of octopuses. And they don't just learn from their own. Octopuses have formed hunting groups with fish. One study from 2024 reviewed 120 hours of hunting footage across 13 octopus fish alliances. The researchers observed fish species like the goatfish acted as a scout looking for good hunting spots. But the octopus was a decision maker. They're the ones that decided when they were going to initiate the hunt. And the octopus took this role very seriously. If a fish was spotted overstepping its bounds, the researchers observed octopuses actually punching the fish to keep them in line. Once again, this alliance is so different from the traditional understanding of intelligence. Typically, a hunting group consists of one species and they may focus on one individual as their prey. They take it down and they all feast on it together. Now, of course, there are some species that have a hierarchy of who gets what and when, but it's typically they focus on one individual prey item that's turned to food to share among everyone. With the octopus fish hunting group, it is described like a raid almost, where they help each other corner the prey, but whoever officially catches it gets to eat it. Now, how that's really determined, I'm not too sure, but this strategy is more efficient than if they were to hunt alone, so their bellies are able to fill up much faster. Also, remember when I mentioned their diets and I said octopuses will bring their prey back to their dens to safely consume? Based on the remains that are tossed just outside of the octopus's dens, octopuses tend to select the largest individuals. And this has been likened to a real-life marshmallow test adjusted for the octopus. The marshmallow test is this famous test that was done in the 1970s where the researchers brought individuals in a room and presented them with a marshmallow. The researchers told the individual that they could eat the marshmallow that is in front of them right now or wait 15 minutes to get 2. The researchers left the room, leaving the test subject and the marshmallow alone. The objective of this study was to determine whether humans have self-control. Self-control being a current indicator of intelligence. Children under the age of 4 usually could not wait, and they'd eat the first marshmallow right away. Kids a little older than 4 would do things like sit on their hands and wiggle around, and these were all tactics used to distract themselves and cope with the temptation that was right in front of them. This yielded some success, but it wasn't until much older kids were tested that the researchers started to observe self-control more consistently. This suggests that self-control and one's ability to resist temptation is not innate in humans, and it must be practiced. And so, one study in 2021 performed a marshmallow test on cuttlefish, which is a fellow cephalopod and relative of the octopus. The cuttlefish was presented with two food options: a piece of king prawn or their favorite, a whole-ass live grass shrimp. The cuttlefish could see the two items, but to get the live grass shrimp, a chamber would open up after a certain period of time. Each trial would increase the amount of time that the cuttlefish would have to wait before the grass shrimp was released. And this time spanned from 10 seconds to 130 seconds, so just a little over 2 minutes. The cuttlefish was willing to wait every single time, so it passed the marshmallow test. Some cuttlefish did display behavior similar to the kids in the human marshmallow test. The cuttlefish would do things like turning its body away from the piece of king prawn, but overall it had way better self-control than humans. Scientists believe this is ingrained on an evolutionary level for cephalopods. For the cuttlefish, scientists believe their superior ability to resist temptation is due to their hunting strategy. They stay put for long periods of time, using their camouflage to avoid predation. They can't be ambushing every single time something swims across their face, because that allows more opportunities to reveal themselves to a predator, and they could become prey themselves. So they optimize their strategy by going after prey that is of better quality. Similarly, octopuses could go back and forth and fill up on several small prey items, but that means they're more susceptible to predation with each time they leave their dens to hunt. So it makes more sense for an octopus to minimize the number of times it goes out by hunting and selecting the larger prey items. This all probably transpired about 140 million years ago when ancient octopuses lost their shell. As a result, they became more vulnerable to predation, but to compensate, their curiosity and ability to outsmart their competitors gave them the upper hand in order to survive. And they have been doing just that for hundreds of millions of years. Given their intelligence evolved in a way so different from us, but they still got there anyway, scientists have described this as convergent evolution. This is the idea that evolutionary pressures between very different species influence similar characteristics, like birds and bats developing wings, or certain insects and reptiles developing venom. And as we move away from thinking only primates, or really only vertebrates, can be intelligent, we are finding intelligence is kinda everywhere. And isn't that just what makes Earth special? The octopus is just one example of how our hubris has formed blind spots when it comes to defining intelligence. We don't have to look to the stars to find other intelligent life out there. We just need to understand the life that is already here. That's going to do it for today, folks. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Like and subscribe if you want to hear more from me, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.